Kelly Hoernig, and today I'm going to be creating a piece on an old game board. Now, I collect old game boards, and Scrabble, I have to say, is the one you find everywhere. You look at garage sales, look at thrift shops, look anywhere and everywhere. I mean, I got a bundle of, I think, 6 Scrabble games for $1 at a garage sale. So they're inexpensive because most people lose all the pieces for Scrabble. So, but there are tons of game boards out there. I'm just choosing to use this one. And I only want to use half. So I'm going to, on the back, you can see that crease right there. So I'm going to run my X-Acto knife right along that crease. Trying not to cut my fingers. Softly at first, because this is tape on the back. It's paper on the front. So you've got to get through that through the tape first. Just take your time and be patient. All right, there you go. So now you've got all these edges. See all the edges to deal with here? I just take an emery board. This is just a fancy emery board, and then I'm just going to sand the paper away so that it gets a nice smooth edge. And then I'm going to apply 1 coat of gesso over the board. I'm going to try to leave the edges and some of the word Scrabble showing. So I'm just going to do a light coat just randomly. I don't want it solid. And then, like I said, I'm going to try to leave these. So if you want to tape off the edges, you can. I'm not going to. If it's a little smeared, that's okay. And then I'll be back. This is what my gesso looks like. As you can see, it kind of goes off to the edges. I really wanted to see the word Scrabble. I wanted people to know that this is an old Scrabble board, so this is how I left it. Now I'm going to come over with some oyster beige, any dark ivory basically, or light tan. That's what I'm going to do. I just want to wash over a little bit of color. So with a wash, I mean adding a little water to it. So there's my paint puddle. I'm dipping my brush in water. And I'm just swirling it around so that it's easier to move. I don't want a thick coat, I want kind of a thin coat. And I'm just brushing it all over the board. Trying again to stay off my little red edges over here on the outside. I'm not trying to get everywhere, I am just trying to put a coat of paint quickly on here to cover up that gesso so that it's not so white. Now what I'm going to do is, while it's still wet, is I'm going to fling a little bit of water on it. So I'm just dipping my fingers in the water bucket. Just trying to add another texture. Giving it a couple seconds to set so that it goes down to the gesso. And I've just got a paper towel here. I'm going to lightly blot. So what it's going to do is pick up the water over the gesso only. And it's going to create little spots, which is another texture, which is what I'm looking for. Got a string in there, don't want that. There we go. Okay, so let me bring you closer so you can see this texture now. So you see all the little spots? That's just what I was looking for. I know that I want some scrapbook paper on here. I'm doing a leaf design. So right now it's fall in my yard, so I am finding all these really cool branches with just a singular leaf on there. And I've been collecting them because they're all a little different. So here's one that's got like a sharp angle. And I like that the leaves are kind of withered and, you know, not perfect. So I'm picturing this going down the center like this, a little off center. So I want to add a piece of paper here. So I've just got some scrapbook scraps actually, and I'm going to find the color that I like. So I want to look for kind of a fallish color because I am going to be doing these leaves in a fall color. So I have this piece of scrapbook paper that's like book type on the back, but then it's got different yellows here, and I thought that would be kind of nice right here. It doesn't go to the edge or anything, but I am going to put it down there. So I'm just going to use decoupage to do that. When I do it, I put decoupage on the back, I lay it flat, I let it dry, and then I will decoupage over the top. I also have a really cool envelope here that I thought I really like this postmark, so I might just pull this off and stick it here down in my design so that the leaf actually comes over it like that and lets the stamp show, which I really like the color of the stamp and I love the postmark, so I'm going to do that as well. So when I come back, both of those will be decoupaged. So this is what my board looks like with my two pieces of, this is scrapbook paper and this is just an old envelope. So I've decoupaged, or I've matte medium, but you can also use decoupage medium. And so I did a light layer on the back, put them down, and then let them dry, and then I did a light layer over top. The reason that you do a layer over top is I know I'm going to paint over it. So I know that I've got the branch and the brush going over it, and I might want to add some shadow. So if you were to just paint right onto the paper's going to like grab it and just like soak it in and not let you move it. But once you have the matte medium or the decoupage on top, it becomes a non-porous surface, so you can move the paint around a little easier. I played around with my design and I actually drew mine out on tracing paper. So I've just got a sheet of tracing paper here and I just played around with what I wanted my leaf to look like. You know, I wanted to include a brush here, so a paintbrush. So I made the twig like it was wrapped around the brush, just so that I could tuck it in there. And once I was happy with the design, I am using it's called water erasable or water soluble transfer paper. I am using its Low Cornell Super Choco paper and it's blue. So what the water erasable means is I can, after the whole design is done, I can come back with just a wet damp brush, almost dry brush, and go right next to the lines and it will erase them. And I will show you that so you can see how cool this stuff is. But feel free to just draw it freehand. It doesn't matter. It's just get your pattern on there however you see fit. I just wanted to make sure that I got my curve right and I didn't want to actually erase on my surface. So that's why I drew mine on tracing paper. So now I have to figure out the colors that I'm going to use. Can you see the little blue lines? That is how the Choco paper actually goes on to the surface. So it's very light, but I can see it. So what I want to show you is how I'm going to be putting my first couple colors in. I want to make sure that they're done light, almost like a transparent wash, so that I can come in and do them deeper as I get darker on them. So I'm going to bring you close so you can see this. So when I'm doing a wash, all that means is adding a little bit of water. So again, this brush is damp. I'm just going to pull out a little bit of puddle here, a little bit of paint, dip my brush into water, and loosen it. So it should become a little more runny. I don't want it like ink. If you tip your palette paper and it starts dripping, that means you have too much water and not enough pigment. Okay. So I'm just going to fill it really kind of quickly, sloppily. Got too much water on my brush. I start in the middle and then I will push to the edges. If you start at the edge, sometimes you will get a little bit of a ridge, and I don't want ridges. Use whatever brush fits in your size here. I've got, my leaf here is pretty wide. As it goes up to the top, it gets a little more narrow, and I will come back with a liner and fix that. So you see how transparent it is, very light. I've got a hair in there. And this is how I'm going to base all of my elements. So I want mine to have a fall leaf color, so that's why I picked this color. This is just sable brown. And if you want, you know, look pretty green, then just pick a green that you like. Just remember that it needs to not be so dark at this stage, because we do want to make sure that we can add darker colors to it. Okay, remember that my leaves are see how shrivelly they are? So I want to make sure that they're not pretty lines at all. So I'm just going to come back and rough them up a little. No pretty lines on here. So I want you to see, let me pull it back here. So I want you to see that you can still see through it, but notice that you really can't see where the white lines are on the board. You really can't see those white lines. So all I'm trying to do is get it thick enough where now I can come on and add 3 or 4 shadows to it, or darker colors, so that I can get some values. So what I'm going to do now is just base the entire piece, the twig, the brush, so when I come back I'm ready to show you the details. So here's what it looks like all based in. Now it's based in with just one coat, or one watery transparent layer, and you can make your brush any color you want. I chose this color so that I would have something else on the page, that kind of yellow. I like that golden yellow. I'm going to touch a little bit of that in the leaves as well. So I want to show you the joy of this Choco paper. So can you see all the blue lines here? See the blue outlines? See them here, here. I'm just going to take a damp brush now. See how it eliminates my lines? So that is my next step. I need to go do the whole piece, make sure all the lines are gone, making sure they're all gone so that I don't have the lines to deal with anymore. So it only takes a couple seconds. Sometimes you will have a stingy part that maybe you've got to re-wet your brush and do it a couple times. But otherwise, it comes off really easily. And this is why I like using that Super Choco paper. Because if I was using black graphite paper, or the white wouldn't have shown up. If I was using black, I would have those really hard lines that I would have to try to get rid of. And you know, it just makes, sometimes it makes your artwork, you can still always see the lines for me. So I'm just going really quickly around my little piece here so that I can get all that graphite off there, all that little Super Choco paper. And sometimes if you put it on kind of thick, sometimes it will make your little edges of your basing a little rigid. So sometimes you do have to clean it up, especially in the darker areas. I wouldn't worry about it in the lighter areas. Okay, we're ready to go. So for this leaf, it's going to be the first thing that I do, because I want to just add washes of color to it. So I've got a pretty intense orange. This is persimmon. If you have a lighter color, you can use that. So this is persimmon on my paper here. It's pretty intense. So I'm going to really water that down. But what I want it to do is have some of that beautiful orange color, because these are oak leaves and they do get a really nice color. And you can see I'm just putting it down in a couple places. I want to touch a little bit of that into my branch as well. So I'm just touching a little bit here and there into it. What I'm going to do now is dampen my brush, dry it on a paper towel, and then I'm going to soften the edges here just to give that a little softer look. And then if I have any edges down here that I want to soften, I can. That looks really nice. I'm going to put a little touch of that into my bristles here. I'm not sure you'll see it in the end, but I like to include it. I'm also going to take some of that yellow and add a little bit of that into the leaf. Again, the brush is yellow, so I want to try to incorporate it in a couple places if I can. Again, it's still transparent. I'm still watering it down. And I'm going to also touch a little bit of that into the branch, especially right next to the handle here, so that it looks like it's kind of a tint of it, like it's almost reflecting. Rinsing my brush, dampening, wiping it off on paper towel, and now I'm just smoothing some of those edges. Now I'm going to let that area totally dry, and we're going to work on this brush here. So the brush, we need to shade that both outer edges. So I'm just using, think of a dark, well, it's the color of the leaf, so it's sable brown. And I'm going to go along the outer edge here. So I'm going to start in the middle like that, and then I'm going to push it into the edge. I don't ever like to start my shading on the edge, because you can get a ridge. So again, I start in the middle here, and then I push it out to the edge. That looks nice. The gray part here, so down here, this is graphite. The color, or sorry, it is charcoal gray. But if you have a graphite color, that's what I used. And then I mixed graphite with that oyster beige and made it lighter gray up here. I just wanted to have two different grays just so that they, you know, look nice, add a little bit of interest. So again, I'm going to shade that edge with the charcoal gray up here. And then I'm going to deepen this edge at the bottom here now with charcoal gray. If anywhere, that seems kind of, see how dark it feels? So I'm going to just take a paper towel that's dampened, and I'm going to blot a little bit. It will pick some up and give it a little more transparency, which is what I want. And then I had to add just a little bitty area here, so let me add that. And you can see here that there you go. Because this is gesso underneath, I was able to just clean that up. Okay, I'm going to flip my brush now and do the opposite side the same way. So again, that was with sable brown. Any dark or yellow color will do, or think of cocoa. I'm going to start in the middle and then push it out to the edge. Again, if you get too heavy, just take your paper towel and you blot it, or you can blot with your fingers. I'm a finger blotter a lot of times, so I will just touch down my finger. They are our best tools, you know. So start in the middle, push it to the edge. Start in the middle here, push it to the edge. Okay, I lost a little of my middle value here, so I'm going to just come back with some water, and then I'm going to blot it. The thing you want to make sure of is that that line and that line looks like they're going to connect. So this line to this line of the brush, yes, they will connect. Need to make that one a little fatter here. All right, now I'm going to do the same shading of the grays, just like I did before. It's way too dark. I'm going to blot. Okay. Where the bristles go down into the ferrule, so where the bristles go inside here, they're tucked inside, so there needs to be a shadow on the bristles right there. So I am going to come back with a little bit of the sable plus the charcoal gray. And now I'm shading the bristles, so it's just a little bitty shadow here. All right, good. Okay, we're going to work on the leaf now. I want to start adding just a little bit of darks. So I've got some raw umber. Raw umber, you think of any kind of dark brown actually. And if you want to do like a raw sienna or a burnt sienna, that would look great on here because your leaf has got a lot of the oranges. So when I am mixing my colors, what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch into the color it was based in. So see how much is on my brush? And I'm going to just tip into the little dark. Can you see the little dark spot there? And then I'm going to mix it on my palette. So what I'm trying to do here is get darker than this color. Just a little bit darker. I don't want it too dark at this stage. That looks good. Then I'm going to add a little more water on my brush. There we go. I can start shading with that color. So where in my leaves, where there's a curve, I like to add a dark spot there. I also like to add a dark spot next to the vein a lot of times. So let's put it down here. Okay, and I want another one right in here. I want this whole little top edge to be dark. I'm going to dampen my brush again, dry it off, and come and smooth that out. And then I'm going to definitely smooth that side out. Clean up my edge of my gesso there. And see how that creates a nice little dark spot? I'm going to try to do that in a couple spots. I really like it. I want it dark up here. Alright, I added another dark here. I want to put in my center vein, and this is a Fons and Porter. It's a white charcoal pencil. So it's just a super fine one, and all I'm going to do is from this stem here go up to the center. And I want to kind of make it not so smooth and pretty. There we go. That looks good. So then I'm going to take my liner with a little bit of the sable brown plus a little bit of that dark, watered it down, thin it down just a little bit. Okay, I like to add some dark values along this line as well. Just blotting it, it's a little bold there. There we go. So just like we did our shading before, so what I'm going to do is still a little bit of that light brown and the dark brown together. And I want to start at the vein and work my way out. So let me start here at this vein point and just walk it out to the edge. See how it sets it in just a little bit? And I want to do that definitely down here at the bottom. So there, we've got nice movement everywhere. It's looking good. with my liner now, in those same two colors, I'm going to drag some of these ends so that they have a nice dark. And I just blot with my finger to soften it. This tall one up here, I want to really make sure I get that because it's all curled up here, so it's really dark. While I have that dark, I'm going to just add a little bit more to my stem here. Okay, that looks really good. Okay, I'm okay with this leaf. I love the way that it looks already. I've got enough shadows. I think it looks really nice and twisty. I'm going to come back and highlight a little bit with my oyster beige and just soften this one out just a little here. There we go. I'm going to touch in a little bit of the plain. There we go. Okay. Now for the branch here, what I want you to notice on these branches, see how they're just really knobby and they're ugly and they're not smooth, and especially, let me see if I can get it to focus for you here. So you see all the colors and all the twists and turns and little bitty pieces. So I'm going to just work in a little section at a time. So I've got, this is the bark color, it's Mississippi Mud. So I'm going to be tipping into Mississippi Mud, some raw umber, some of that charcoal gray, and every now and then I will tip into this oyster beige. I might tip into that just to lighten, so really anything on my palette is okay. So what I'm going to do is start down here at the bottom first until I get my, let me put this here so you can see it, until I get my bearing. So remember, they should all be watery. So I got a little bit of water here. I'm going to touch into a little bit of the brown. That looks good. And I'm just going to have bouncy strokes. So see that? I'm just bouncing up and down. Every now and then I'll tip into some of the white just because it will help smooth it. See what it did to the value? It just made it kind of go away. I like that. If you're ever in doubt, just blot it with your finger. So that is how this whole stick is going to be done, and I'm going to do that in fast motion so you can see it. Alright, I'm going to add some darks now to it because I'm liking how it looks, but it definitely needs some darks. So I'm going to come on with some raw umber first. And first thing I want to do is shade around the handle here. So I just want to add a nice darkness next to it. Again, if you notice, I'm just bouncing in and out of my steps here. That's good. want to get the inside here so it just looks a little shadowed. And I'm also going over the envelope there so that I can kind of hide that seam a little bit. And I definitely want to do a little bit up here. So as it crosses the pencil, I mean the paintbrush. So see how it just added a couple nice darks to it. That looks good. Now on this paintbrush here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my brush, so I'm using a liner brush. So I'm going to wet the area. I'm going to have this loaded with oyster beige, and then I'm going to go down the middle here. And I will show you that. I'm loading my brush first. Okay, so I'm going to dampen this brush. It's damp already. I'm going to go right down the middle, so I'm just getting that damp. I'm going to take my brush now. And all that does is help it bleed just a little bit. So I'm going to take my brush now and clean it up so it's nice and tight. Straight. There you go. I'm going to do the same up here. They should match, they should line up, this line to that line. Got a little willy-nilly here, I'm going to fix that. There we go, good. It can be a little brighter down here. Alright, dampening my brush because now I have to do all of this. So I'm reloading my white brush, or my oyster beige brush. Dampening here. Gonna do the same in the gray area. Wasn't quite damp down there. There we go. Nice. It's just an easy way to do it so that you're not really struggling with the brightness of it. This little area up here I want to make a little stronger. There we go. All right. Now it's nicely highlighted. Okay. I really don't even think I'm going to add anything to the bristles. The bristles are so tight. But what I do need to add is where the ferrule, so where the metal part attaches to the brush, the wooden part actually goes under the metal. So I need to put a shadow right there. So put one right here. Okay. So where the twig goes across the brush, I need to put a little shadow there as well. And I want it to be soft. Nice. Clean up the edge with just a damp brush. Okay, so you can see now it looks believable that it's crossing. I do want to touch just a tad of white into this little stem area here, or the oyster beige. That's nice. Okay. So now let's have a once over at it. So you can see we got nice values going on everywhere. So we've got a nice dark on the brush. We've got a really nice dark there where that crosses over. we've got a lot of nice shadows up here. I've lost some of the orange in my twig down here. So I'm going to just pick up a little bit of the orange again. And I'm just going to brush it over some of that. I usually try to go in the little darker areas. I don't want it to be too bright, but I do want to see a little bit of the orange. That's better. Okay, I would like a little more dark onto the twig here. Now I'm just being nitpicky. I like that better. Okay, the next thing I want to do, my piece is actually going to be standing up this way. Okay, so it's going to be standing this way. I thought it would be really fun to either glue letters, you know, these, since it's a Scrabble board, right? Either glue letters on here, or actually what I did was I took just a piece of cardstock that I had, I traced on the square, and then I cut it out with an X-Acto knife, or else I could paint it on. So I could use this kind of like a stencil as it goes through. So I'm not sure what I want to write in there, but I do know that I want a couple of the words, a couple of the tiles. So do I want them all just a position? Do I want them all straight? I think I want them kind of half and half. I do like where the stem comes down. That is where I might even start. Let's look at them down there. Yeah, that looks nice. So I like where it ends. So that's where I'm going to put my first one. So I'm going to make a mix of the sable plus the orange. I mean, sable plus the white. Or in our case, it is oyster beige. I'm trying to match the wood grain. And I want it to be there, but I don't want it to stand out. Right? I want it to kind of blend. And I've just got a cosmetic sponge, that's what I'm going to use, so I want to make sure that that's where my first one goes. Alright, when I'm using a cosmetic sponge, I dip into the paint, but then I always dip onto the palette, and that just gets off the excess. Oh yeah, look how nice. So let's do the next one there. All right. So see, that's a good little template to use. And then the cosmetic sponge I just wash. So when I put the letter on there, it has a little bit of shadow. So I am going to go ahead and make that shadow. I'm going to bring you closer so you can see what I'm doing here. See the little shadow underneath it? So I'm going to use the same color as the stick, so Mississippi Mud, to shade it with. Again, make sure that you're adding a little bit of water so it's a little more transparent. It's got a really thin line down the edge here. It's got a fatter line down here. Okay, so I'm going to take a pencil first and I'm going to do my letters. I'm going to do mine in a mix of Mississippi Mud and raw umber. It's going to be thinned down. I'm going to take a really fine liner and in just Mississippi mud so that it's lighter, and a little bit of the sable. Write the points that they're worth. There you go. I'm going to take my liner now with a little bit of stronger Mississippi mud and a touch of the raw umber. I'm going to just deepen that little line right here. There you have it. They're so cute. Okay, so there's my little Scrabble pieces, and I love that it's lighter down here. You know, it doesn't fight for attention. That's why I have all this kind of up here, you know, to kind of frame. Notice the paper in this frames up here where I wanted your eye to go, and then down here it's just there. If you wanted this to be even lighter, you could come back with a little wash of either the oyster beige or a little bit of gesso and blot it out a little bit more, but I'm totally happy with it. I think it's really, really nice. I love my shadows. I love everything about it. Love that little touch of orange. So thanks for creating with me. Bye everyone.